All right, it's 3-2 Warriors now, and from the Celtics standpoint, it's kind of rough to lose the game where Steph Curry falls back down to earth. His impact was still massive. We'll talk about some gravity assists or actual assists. I mean, there was one action in, I want to say it was the third or fourth quarter, where they just ran a split action, and Horford was high up on it, but I believe Marcus went with Steph as well, and so that led to Wiggins having a roll to the rim, and he finished with a pretty tough layup. I believe it was through Time Lord. Wiggins had another one where it was a Steph pick and roll, and Time Lord was up there, but then Steph just sort of swung it to Wiggins, and then he had this running hook shot thing over Al Horford that was tough. Wiggins, of course, took Derek White off the dribble a couple of times and got him with a turnaround jumper, and I just kind of segued off of that Steph part. But Wiggins had maybe the game of his life. I think that's fair to say, given the stakes. And of course, it was not just on offense. I mean, he forced Tatum into a travel later in the game. He had at least one possession where Tatum tried to take a MISO and it resulted in a 15-foot fadeaway that was an air ball. There was at least one like that. Tatum had like a little sequence where he took two shots I really didn't like. One was a three on the elbow where nothing was happening. Another one was a fadeaway on the baseline where I don't believe it was like the end of the shot clock or whatever. But the real reason the Celtics offense struggled is because the Warriors defense was once again great. I mean, the amount of plays I could mention, there was one in the beginning of the fourth quarter where as Tatum looked to take Looney off the dribble because they switched that, which, yeah, the Warriors have been switching a lot of the on-ball stuff. Clay just timed it perfectly to help off of Grant Williams after Tatum had pretty much already committed to the drive, getting that extra contest at the rim. The Warriors did a little bit more trapping in this game, I felt like. There was one late third where Jordan Poole as well as Wiggins, they trapped Tatum because Grant Williams was screening for him. And the basis of the whole thing was leaving Horford wide open in the opposite corner. And I do think that was something the Warriors hung their hats on a bit defensively in this game. And yeah, there's going to be times where, and by the way, Jalen missed a three off of that Tatum trap, and it was well contested by Gary Payton II. But like there was one play where Tatum had a skip pass to Grant Williams in the opposite corner, and then he pump fake, took like two dribbles, got it to Time Lord dunked over Draymond. So that's what's going to happen sometimes. There were also the times, in the third where Horford and Marcus had back-to-back top of the key threes because the Warriors are going to be aggressive with their help, and they're going to dare you to make the tough pass. And sometimes you're going to make it, you're going to make the shot. Cool. And then other times what's going to happen is you may just not see the pass, or you will, but they do a great job of closing out. So there was a play in the fourth where it was actually a Spain pick and roll, and I get all this from Twitter, by the way. Steve Jones Jr. on Twitter specifically, as well as Mo Dackhill, if I'm saying his name right. Marcus gets a screen from Tatum, and Wiggins has got to, meet Marcus so it's not just a wide open layup, but then he also still closed all the way back out to Tatum, and then from there it just basically becomes a Tatum-Wiggins ISO. It's a kick to Jalen. Gary Payton closes out beautifully on Jalen, and yeah, sometimes that's just going to be make or miss, but Golden State's defense has just been so damn good, dude. And speaking of GP, there was one more where they trapped Tatum, and then he rotated off of Jalen to stop Marcus from getting a drive because he was the other guy involved in the play with Tatum. And then he closed out to Jalen because it went from Horford to Jalen, and then he ripped Jalen. So anyway, for the Celtics, what can you say about yourselves going into Game 6 to feel good? I mean, you made some progress on guarding the Steph high screen stuff. I mean, there was that one where Grant blocked him from behind. Time Lord was up there, and he forced Steph to pass it out, so kudos to you there. Of course, you're going to have some of their off-ball stuff that is stopped from you just simply switching, so again, congrats. But with that said, again, the threat of Steph is still strong enough to where you're throwing two at the ball when he's moving off ball. Now something else is happening. But also, he's probably just going to shoot better. I mean, even if I do think that this was the best game they've had in guarding him on some of the on-ball screens and stuff, they still got a bit of a break on some of his misses tonight. The other thing is still the offense. So I'm sure if you go through all of these amazing Warriors defensive possessions, there will be pockets of time. They'll be very short, but they will exist of maybe that pass would have been there, or if that guy cut, or whatever it would have been. I mean, hell, one of those traps I was talking about when I looked at it, if Horford would have cut from the corner, maybe you get a basket out of it, or instead of a Jalen missed three. So that can be something for you. I would love if you had some way to generate just driving lanes for Tatum and Jalen. I remember there was one random play where Draymond switched onto Jalen. Sometimes he starts possessions on him, but there was one play I remember where he switches onto him and then Jalen just shot a three over his face, and that was just kind of the possession. It did not go in, but it was just a moment of, man, it's tough to get driving lanes right now. And I mean, I talked earlier in the series about, one big, two bigs. They've had varying degrees of success. Sometimes they look amazing with two out there. Sometimes the spacing's rough. Sometimes I feel like they put Time Lord in the dunker spot rather than involving him in an action at the top of the key or whatever. And then it's like, there's just a lot of bodies in the paint right now. Again, when I mentioned it earlier in the series, I'm going to say the same thing here. I don't confidently have a take. We'll just see. I mean, you need these guys on defense, so it's never an easy decision. And the other question I've still got is, do you have any more, let's say, off-ball stuff for Tatum to run in this thing besides screens up top for him, which, again, the Warriors, they experimented with some more traps, and I do think they were successful overall. And also, it felt like it just gave them a look that they could get used to a lot throughout the game and really hone down on, where the help's coming from, the timing of the extra guy coming to the rim and all that. And, we'll see.